Okay, so it seems like President Biden doesn't know when to take a victory lap. He's been touting, oh, yeah, gosh, the prices, are lower for Thanksgiving meal prices and so on and so forth. And now he's admitted that, well, yeah, prices are too high because prices haven't gone down. What's really happened is that wages have gone up a little bit. Let's talk about it. Sean Themea joins us on the Wake Up Call, political strategist, commentator. He's the chief of staff for Young Americans for Liberty, and he joins us on the Wake Up Call. Sean, thanks for being with us. Okay, so he is pretty much whiplashed on this issue of inflation, blaming just about everything but his own policies. What are you looking at, and what do you think are the main themes here?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And, you can't trust anything Biden says. He's been lying for 40 years, ever since he got to Washington. Robin Williams built this into a stand-up routine in 1988. So people even knew back then. So people are waking up to that. The main reason that things are so expensive and people can't put food on the table, people can't fill up their gas tank, we all know why it is. It's because Biden is printing so much money and sending it to everywhere but Americans, right? We're sending it overseas to Ukraine. We're sending it over in the Middle East. It's ending up in the hands of Hamas, right? The more money you print and the more money you spend, right, the more the dollar is devalued and the more expensive things get, and the less far your money goes. And so people are waking up to this. This is a moment where young people are starting to be aware of how our monetary policy works because they're paying for the bad decisions of people like Joe Biden. And that's becoming self-evident. He's losing support in the polls, and it's going to be an interesting election in 2024.
You say that folks are becoming more acquainted with and more educated about monetary policy. Do you really believe that? Because for most folks, that's almost too much in the weeds. And frankly, the media does a really poor job of really breaking down monetary issues to where people can really clearly understand it. So I guess maybe I'm kind of taking issue with you a little bit on how aware they are of monetary policy. But I'll let you defend your position.
I'll speak on behalf of the college students that, we work with every day. And you're going to laugh. This may sound a little silly, but, it's in part the means, right? You look at internet culture. You look at when we started printing money, during the coronavirus pandemic when that first broke out. Simple cartoon image of a guy with a money printer saying, "Money printer go burr," right? It's an internet speak. Right? That planted the seed in a lot of young people and saying, wait, what is this? What is the Federal Reserve? Why are we printing more dollars in American history than we have in the course of our whole republic in the last 2 years? And young people connect the dots, right? They learn more outside the classroom and on the internet than they do in these cesspools of, college liberal, dungeons. And so I'm optimistic that young people are waking up from what I'm seeing, and we're seeing Biden dipping in support with young people, and part of that is as simple as their dollar doesn't go as far. They're connecting the basic dots, and, Biden's loss is our gain in that sense.
Well, Biden's loss, you would say, is our gain, but the question is, if push comes to shove, so far Trump is leading the polls, and you never know what's going to happen until, the first votes, the Iowa caucus, and then New Hampshire and beyond. You don't know what's going to happen. But let's say that it was a choice between Trump, who's been demonized on all of those college campuses, was and still is, and Biden. Are they going to be the ones that are actually going to go, I'm going to vote for Trump instead?
I think it's more possible than we ever could have imagined. You look at a recent poll came out a couple of weeks ago where Trump is at 47% of young people, Biden's at 45%. I think that speaks to how just objectively bad Biden administration's policies have been. You look at him hemorrhaging support with these far-left students, right, who originally supported him as the Trump foil, but he, lied to them and pulled back on the student loans. He lied to them and pulled back on many such promises. They are not happy at all that he's doing anything to get involved in the Middle East because of the pro-Hamas sentiment on campus. So he's losing support from the average Joe. He's losing support from the apathetic folks. He's losing support from the far left. I don't see anybody out there on college campuses jumping up and down for Biden. So they're either going to stay home or some people are going to vote against the status quo, just like they did in 2016. I think this is going to be a lot more like 2016 than it was like in 2020.
Aren't the young, though? I mean, when they have that, lesser of two evils choice, aren't they usually more likely to just go, screw both of these people, I'm not even going to vote?
It's possible. I think that anything can happen in this election, especially when you factor in the RFK factor. That is a huge wild card, a dark horse that could pull from both Trump or Biden, the presumptive nominees. But I think you had a lot of people, especially, I think when I was 19, right, I'm pushing 30 now, right, so I'm getting old in that context. But you vote against the status quo for the sake of change, right? In 2020, you had to get gear right, propaganda against Trump. But, these last 4 years have not been kind to Americans of all stripes, right? And that animation of, we got to get Trump out of there just isn't there. And I do not think young people are excited about what Joe Biden is doing. And that Biden fatigue, if it held today, if the election were held today, I think the Biden fatigue would outweigh the anti-Trump sentiment because, Trump's not in office right now. Biden is, and people are not happy.
Sean Themea joining us on the wake-up call. He is a Young Voices chief of staff for Young Americans for Liberty. Sean, I want to go back to that last question, talking about young voters and maybe not voting. I know we always say you got to vote, you got to vote, you got to vote, but is it better for maybe the Trump fans out there if some of those young voters just don't vote at all because they have a 0% chance they'll ever vote for Trump?
Yeah, I don't think people should vote unless they're informed, right? You see kind of organizations like Rock the Vote saying, you just got to vote, man. You got to get out there and vote. I think that's the worst advice you could ever give someone. Yeah. You got to know what you're voting for. But in terms of, young people voting, I think that we could be in for a surprise, right? We could see a split across the board. But I just don't think you have the same turnout in 2020 where you had young people overwhelmingly voting for Biden. They ate up a lot of the propaganda that was fed to them about Trump. But I think the facts are going to speak for themselves, and I don't think that, unless a miracle happens, that Biden is going to see a lot of youth support. And if he really turns things around, hey, that's great for the country, but I just don't see it happening. So, I think that right now you look at young people and they're hemorrhaging support from Biden, and that is going to continue unless we get a miracle from above.
Kind of off topic, sort of, kinda.
Yeah.
Are any other? You mentioned RFK Jr., who's running, looks like, as an independent. Are there any other Democrats at this point that are wanting to throw their hat into the ring to challenge Biden, at least in the primaries?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So you've got Dean Phillips, who's out in Minnesota. He has officially filed paperwork. He's officially in the race. He's running on Biden can't win in the general. His biggest problem is going to be name ID because, by the time people know who he is, their election will have probably already passed over, right? So I don't think he realistically has a shot. I applaud him for standing up for, against Biden, even though I might not agree with his policies. And I think, call it a conspiracy theory, but I think that there are some people who are holding out and are thinking, there's no way Biden's actually going to run. He's going to drop out. Kamala is not going to poll well. They're not going to put her as the nominee. And so they're just waiting for Gavin Newsom to sweep in. And, look, I don't have a crystal ball. I think it's more likely that Biden is the guy on the ballot in November 2024. But I think a lot of people are kind of sitting out and quietly saying, man, I hope he just decides to drop out because Gavin Newsom will be a lot harder to beat in the general election. He's younger, he's stronger, he's quicker. I don't like him as much as Biden, but, that would be a tougher race.
All right. Sean, we appreciate you joining us on the Wake Up Call. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Sean.